I've often observed in the life of a couple that if one person really likes to do something or go somewhere and the other person not so much, over time something happens. It could be, for example, watching a favorite sport or going to a specific place, having a particular kind of hobby. The other one who's not so enthusiastic about it, at least initially, realizes that it's a source of relaxation and enjoyment for the person in their relationship. And admittedly, while it may remain this way, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, often what happens, or certainly can happen, is that one person may actually begin to enjoy spending time, could be watching a game on a Saturday afternoon, watching a game because not so much they enjoy it, but the person that they love enjoys it. And so they wind up actually enjoying it in a sort of secondary way. They actually love the person, they know this is really important to them or it's very helpful to them, and they love that rather than the game per se. What is a reality in human relationships is even more true in our relationship with God. And we see the importance of this taught by Jesus in the gospel of the day. In the gospel, Jesus has a question put to him. The lawyer wanted to test him, the scripture says, about what the greatest commandment was. This was actually a common type of discussion amongst rabbis. The one who could boil everything down to kind of one or two pithy statements was held in high esteem. So they had a saying amongst the rabbis, stand on one leg and recite the whole law, like I'm standing on one leg right now. So recite the whole law by standing on one leg, or as you stand on one leg, recite the whole law. So in other words, you don't have much time because you're going to begin to wobble. So like get to the pith, get to the core of it. So this was an intellectual, I don't want to say game, but it was an intellectual test, as it were. This would kind of like be similar to a situation a person was being asked, what's your Catholicism all about? Or what is this religion stuff all about? And to answer the question, you have a very short period of time. Let's say that you're having the discussion, begins outside of an elevator, you get into the elevator, and you have like one floor to answer the question, like first floor to the second floor. What do I say? Like 30 seconds. And you have right on the tip of your tongue the kerygma, like created, captured, rescued, and response. Get to the second floor, this person walks out. They may not agree with this, but they will probably be impressed, at least from a certain point of view, because you had a succinct answer, so you're quick of mind, and it made sense. You may or may not get the chance to unpack that, but that's for another discussion. The Pharisees and the Sadducees in today's gospel had to be impressed with Jesus' answer. For some odd reason, no rabbi had ever put these two verses together, taken from the Torah or the first 5 books of the Bible. Deuteronomy 6:4, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Leviticus 19:18, love your neighbor as yourself. This being said, why do these, as Jesus would say, why do these sum up the whole law and everything else hangs on them? The law and the prophets, in fact. Everything hangs on them. That's really, in a way, the important question. Go back to the example of the couple. One really likes to do something and the other not so much. But that person really loves their spouse. And I'm not talking about in some sort of sugary kind of way, but there's a genuine, deep affection for their spouse. It's not like, oh dear, I'll do everything that you want to do. You know, that kind of wears off pretty quick, right? But there's a genuine, deep love for not only the other person, but the things they love or the things they like, even though that may not be my personal thing. So they begin to at least like what the other person loves, what their spouse really likes to do or really loves. They like the fact that at least while they may not personally enjoy this, they love their spouse. So in effect, over time, love is helping them to become like each other. It is the mystery of love. And so I observe couples, my own mom and dad really is baseline. And over a period of time, they pick up each other's habits. You married people know this, for better or for worse, right? You pick up each other's habits. Sometimes you can finish each other's sentences after a while. You just have to make sure you don't know everything, because then you get into big trouble. But the same thing happens in a much deeper, more profound way when it comes to God and loving Him. When we love God and really open ourselves to loving Him, we become more and more like Him, and as a result, we begin to love what He loves. This idea gives us an insight into why the church inserts the first reading into today's Mass. God says to the children of Israel, "You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien." That means a goyim, a Gentile. "For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. You shall not abuse any widow or orphan," and so on. So what's going on here? These groups of people were very vulnerable. Not just vulnerable, but very vulnerable. Were helpless in the societies in which they lived. They had little to no protection. As a result of this, they were subject to being used and abused. In almost every society, this kind of thing happened. So God is saying to His children, I love them. They're my children as well. I love them. They're my children, and so two things need to happen with you who are my firstborn. That's what God called the children of Israel. Number one, you must love me more than anything else in the whole world. Even love me more than yourself. And number two, when this happens, when you love me more than anything else, what should happen, if you get the point, if you understand it, is that you will come to love these people who are vulnerable, helpless, and often taken advantage of, because you will become like me. Just as happens on a natural level with two people who love each other over a long period of time, and they become in a way like each other, even more so, you will come to love what I love. And guess what God is saying? I love everyone. There's no limit on my love. In this world, we can pick up each other's bad habits, and we do. Right? Children pick up the bad habits of their parents. They love their parents dearly, but they can pick up all sorts of bad habits. Even spouses will pick up bad habits from each other. We can't pick up any bad habits from God. It's only good habits. Right? So this is why it's so important that we love Him more than we love each other. And it's not like in a 1 to 10, but it's in a different kind of love. We love Him with the love of adoration. And in becoming like Him, we love each other spousally, fraternally, and all that, all the different kinds of love. We love better because we're becoming more like Him. Think of the gospel. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. This was not unknown to the Jews because they were familiar with Leviticus 19:18. However, a scribe would ask Jesus, and who's my neighbor? So the guy gets a bit cocky and he wants to know who's the neighbor. So the problem is they reduced the neighbor to one's tribe or clan. So you would think that the answer, love your neighbor as yourself, would take care of it, but it didn't because of the way our defective and sin-laden minds work. Well, who's my neighbor then? My neighbor's only in my family, but he's not in my family, so I don't have to love him. I don't have to love you because you're not in my clan either. And Jesus comes along and he says, no. Everybody is the one you're supposed to love. Everybody is your neighbor, not just your clan. Now, you and I might say that's a no-brainer. We may know it intellectually, but we don't always live it behaviorally. These people didn't even think about it intellectually because the people outside of my clan were not my neighbor. So Jesus is really challenging them to love like God, to love God who loves them, and they're his children. We can find it very hard not only to love horrible people who do terrible things, but sometimes we can find it hard to love that person in our home or who has just ticked us off, hurt us or offended us. Get into an argument and you're just really hurt. God says, by loving me with all of your heart, all of your mind, all of your body as well, with all of your soul, that we will love what he loves. And that means that person not only around the world, who may be a warlord or an abortionist or whatever, but also the person in our home, our siblings, our office area, on the road, and even ourselves, because many times we don't love ourselves. Many people have a lot of self-loathing. God's love is not finite like yours and mine is. God's love is infinite. It has no limits. And he wants all of his children to be saved and get to heaven. One thing we can do to open ourselves up to what Jesus is not only telling us, but he's offering this to us. It's almost as if Jesus was saying, on the one hand, I'm telling you, you have to do it. But if you understand what I'm telling you, you have to do, you will want to do this so much. Because this will free you from your limitations and from your defective understanding of love. One thing we can do is when we rise in the morning, make this part of your morning offering. It's really easy. There's many ways we can do this. But recite one time a day in the morning the answer that Jesus gives in today's gospel. And we can put it this way: Lord, help me to love you with all of my heart, all of my mind, all of my body, all of my soul, and help me to love my neighbor as myself. That's not only the person who's on the road, who's in the office, guy next door. It could be my spouse, could be my sibling, though they're not in the house. Could be my kids that I'm having a difficult time with right now, or my parents. Help me to love them like you love them. Or the way I try to put it into even more succinct words, and what I'll say is, meaning this same reality, I'll say, the two men in the Old Testament who kind of sum this up is, Lord, give me a heart like David, because David was after your own heart. That's what the scripture says. That's what God says. David was a man after my own heart. Lord, help me to have a heart like David, who was after your own heart, and help me to be like Daniel, a man of desires. Desires not in the sense of wanting too much food, but desires for good, holy things, desires for God. Those can be like our password. Even briefer, Lord, give me a heart like David and desires like Daniel. And you mean all of those things that I just said a while ago. Help me to love you with all of my heart, all of my mind, all of my body. And to remember this when I come into contact with somebody and I already begin to feel hard of heart inside. Help me to remember this. So that hopefully will lead us to want to work it out, to think better of that person, not to gossip about that person, to pray for them from the heart. Remember, Jesus said, when you pray for somebody, it's got to be from your heart, or it doesn't count. It's got to be from your heart. So this is one thing that can really set the pace for our day. It can set the trajectory for our day. Doesn't mean it's going to be 100% perfect or everything's going to go hunky-dory. But if we start the day well, it's much, much, much more likely that we'll live the day well and we'll finish the day well. And if at least we start the day well and it goes off course and we remember this, we'll get back on course and resume the trajectory.